we were ready, and we couldn't have been more prepared. But, when sometimes your first taste of blood is your own or your friends, it's not exactly the way, it's not as glamorous as it is in the novels.
Right.
But, that was, I loved it.
Hey guys, Tom Marshall here with RECOIL TV Podcast, and today I'm sitting down with Don Edwards of Greenline Tactical. Don, thanks so much for coming out.
Hey man, good to see you.
For those out there that don't already know you or haven't already taken a Greenline class, let's talk a little bit about Don.
All right.
Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, where you're from originally, and how you wound up going into the military.
Okay, cool. I'm born and raised out in California on the West Coast, Central California, so not any of the big cities, a very agricultural area. Just kind of regular life growing up there, but I'd say I was always kind of fascinated about, the stories from the guys from the Vietnam era and stuff like that. So we'd read some of those books that I'm sure you've read some of them too, about the Green Berets and the Rangers and the Lerps and stuff like that. So, I'd be the kid that would be in the newsstand, reading Soldier Fortune magazine, but not paying for it. Right.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So that was always kind of like, wow, I was drawn to that type of guy or whatever that fantasized about being that guy. It was just kind of like, where I was. Graduated from high school, went away to school for about a year, and really just my heart wasn't in it. So then I didn't. Your heart's not in going to college. You're not studying either. So came back home. Decided, I wanted to join the Army anyway. I went down and basically that it was kind of a natural, one of those things where just a little delay. I kind of always knew that that's what I wanted to do, at least to go see what it was all about and give it a try. And I really didn't, on one hand, I felt like, you feel like you know what you're getting yourself into because you've, read the magazine. We didn't have internet, but you read the magazines, you read the stories, and most of those stories were either from, the Vietnam guys or, you were some about the SF dudes doing stuff with the Mujahideen and, in Afghanistan way back then, things like that. So it's like, I knew that I didn't want to just be a regular soldier. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but throughout my life, I always kind of wanted to be around guys that were like professionals. So I go to the recruiter. It's like first I went to the Marines, and they're like, yeah, if we let you in the Marine Corps, you're going to do whatever we say. And I was like, well, that's not really it. The Navy wanted me to work on nuclear subs and offered me all kinds of money because I guess they thought I was smart. I was like, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to. And I didn't know anything about SEALs back then. And then so I go into the Army and I was like, I want to be a Green Beret. And I'm like, well, you can't do that initially. You have to already be in for 2 to 4 years, and then you apply, and then so I think somewhere along there I was like, well, tell me about this Ranger thing. I think maybe they showed me a video, and they're like, oh yeah, that's really hard. You don't want to do that. And I was like, well, I think that's what I want to do, and so that's what I ended up. I basically had a contract to go in, and as long as I made it through airborne school and RIP, Ranger Indoctrination Program, and then I ended up there in 3rd Ranger Battalion at Fort Benning. My very first, duty station. Spent 4 years there, and was a participant in Operation Just Cause, December 1989. We jumped into Rio Hato drop zone. There's a little bit of be careful what you wish for kind of thing.
Yeah.
We were ready, and we couldn't have been more prepared. But, when sometimes your first taste of blood is your own or your friends, it's not exactly the way, it's not as glamorous as it is in the novels.
Right.
But, that was, I loved it. However, I blame the Army for me getting out of the Army. You've probably seen this.
The Army's really good at that.
The day you show up to basic training, somebody is asking you how many days until you get out. And it's like, I don't know why we do that. So it was just assumed, hey, 4 years, I'm getting out. I'm going back to the family, nursery business and do my thing and, all that. And I didn't feel like there was very much encouragement to stay in and do something, because I was already in a unit where you had to have an aptitude and a desire to be there. You volunteered for all kinds of, things to just be in the Ranger Battalion. And it was like, most of those guys are the kind of guys that want to do that stuff and want to do more, right? And I just felt like I wasn't really encouraged, or, I hate recruiting, but it was until the very last minute. And the decision had already been made. I'm out of here. Well, why are you leaving? I was like, looking back, I'm like, well, why didn't you guys try to keep me?
Yeah.
But it wasn't the culture. It was pre 9/11. This was the 80s and 90s. We had done our combat, once a generation. Grenada, Panama. Then somebody was going to get 10 more years, or whatever. And then we didn't know what was going to happen. So I got out, had a break in service. During that time period, I met some guys in the Guard and Reserve SF, and I ended up joining the National Guard and spending the rest of my career in 20th Special Forces Group. Retired as a team sergeant there. And 9/11 happened. Spent a couple of full deployments in uniform. The last one I did was as a team sergeant, and then after that, started working as a contractor. And so as a contract advisor, consultant, back to the U.S. Army. And so the program called the Asymmetric Warfare Group. And then after about a year of that, I ended up being in a very similar program called the Joint IED Defeat Organization, they had a JET program. And we're boots on the ground, advisors, troubleshooters, maybe, if you will. The big thing was the advisory and the training side of things. So we would be out there experiencing, gathering, documenting new and emerging threats or solutions that had already been found for those, so that we could pass those TTPs and solutions on to everybody else who was probably going to experience those. And then another very rewarding part of that was we would go, when we came home to the U.S., because we're like 4 months in, 4 months out kind of thing, we would spend time with units that were getting ready to deploy right back to where we just came from. So we had that fresh subject matter expert knowledge that we could bring to them in their training cycle as they were getting ready to go, bring them enablers and assets that they would either be able to take advantage of while they were there, or that might be deploying with them. So it was really, really cool. So, because as you've spent some time overseas, sometimes it would be maybe even a couple years in between where a unit would deploy, they'd be home for maybe 2 years, and then they would get ready to go back again. They assume, they remember what it was when they went there, but by the time they get back, it's entirely different. So they're preparing for what they experienced before.
Right.
And, being able to go to them during their training cycle at NTC or JRTC or something like that, be like, no, that is no longer. This is the threat, and this is what's going on. Because if they don't find that out till they get back in country, there's no change in the direction of that ship. But you can turn a battleship almost 180 prior to, and that was super rewarding, being able to coach these guys or advise the commanders.
And
on stuff
without
like that,
that's how you wind up in that, the kind of the old stereotype of we're always fighting the last war.
Oh yeah, and in our case, we're always fighting the last deployment we were on.
Right.
And it could change from rotation to rotation. So that was a really rewarding thing, and it wasn't all that unlike being an SF guy. So I like that as well. That was the kind of thing that drew me to that kind of thing. So I've always kind of been, I guess, somewhat of a problem solver when it came, and tactically minded. I've always liked the shooting. I didn't really grow up doing a lot of shooting. A little bit. I mean, I wouldn't say we lived in the country, but we had BB guns and stuff like that. But I didn't grow up really hunting and stuff like that. So originally in the Army, it was just like, okay, well, you got to qualify with the rifle. You got to, if you're a saw gunner, you got to qualify with this and that. You didn't shoot a lot. Like, there's much more of a culture of shooting, I think, than there ever was. But in the Guard, I was also doing some stuff with like SWAT and stuff like that as far as training goes. So I got to go learn to shoot from some different guys. And then I actually learned to shoot a pistol from a guy named Kyle Lamb. And I credit him with putting me on the right path with a handgun. And I was like, this is really fun, So, here we are.
I want to rewind a little bit on a couple.
Yeah, no,
things.
I kind of went.
No, that's good. Yeah, no, you gave us the one over 50,000. I kind of want to get into the weeds into a little bit of it.
Oh, you want to get personal?
A little bit, yeah, I do.
Right.
So let's go back to Ranger Bat.
Okay.
So what piece of the Panama mission belonged to you guys? Like what was your guys' either at the company level or even at the bat level?
Yeah.
What piece of the pie was yours?
I was in 3rd of the 75th. I was in Bravo Company, and I was in 2nd Platoon Bravo Company, and so we jumped into Rio Hato, DZ, and part of our responsibility was blocking off the road that went across the center of it. It was the Pan American Highway, and it sounded, what everybody has to remember is we had like maybe old satellite imagery. We didn't have Google Earth or anything like that in 1989. So we had these pictures. They weren't that great. We had a map. So we knew here's the airfield and there's this road going across the center of it, and it's the Pan American Highway. And we have to block the Pan American Highway and clear anything on that so that the fixed wing, the C-130s and whatnot could land, because the little birds are on those, the Jeep team guys are, all those on. And actually, so yeah, that was our job. My platoon was to block this side off, and a platoon from, I guess, Alpha Company or somebody was blocking that side off. So we had no idea really what to expect. Guys jumped in the quickie saws, and that was because we were assuming, okay, in America, you would have a big chain link fence along the Pan American Highway, right? So guys are jumping in quickie saws. We're like, okay, contingency. What happens if the quickie saw dude burns in, or his rucksack strap breaks and his saw, smashes to pieces? Okay, we're going to use demo on those things. Well, I was a demo guy, so I had a rucksack full of C4 and all kinds of heavy crap, with the plan of, okay, we're going to put charges on this fence because we got to clear it out. Those C-130s aren't going to hang out there. They can't fly in circles forever, right? We land. Finally get up to where it's supposed to be, and run into a guy who was our old platoon leader, who was the company XO at the time, and he's like, get over here and help me pull this out of the way. And we're like, what is this? He's like, this is the fence. And it was like rusty barbed wire, and these rotten fence posts, and he was breaking them off and dragging them out of the way and stuff. I was like, this is the fence? I'm like, what am I going to do with all this demo? Like, I'm going to carry it around for the next couple of weeks, I guess.
I guess better to have it than not need it?
No, because I had to carry that crap on my back, man. So that was the thing. Then we set up blocking positions there, and then guys with the Jeeps came in and kind of reinforced. We set up the initial blocking position on our side, and then when the birds landed and the Jeeps, and we called them Jeeps and bikes back then, they came in and basically relieved us, and they pushed it further out, and then we basically set up a perimeter there and seized the airfield there at Rio Hato.
How long were you guys on the ground for?
Man, I don't remember exactly. I mean, we were in country December 20th. I mean, shoot, we came home early January, so it was really only about 3 weeks. I mean, we spent Christmas there, and that was, things were winding down. It wasn't, I mean, it was tense. That night was pretty tense, and a few people had some other skirmishes and stuff like that. And once they actually arrested Noriega, because they had him, cooped up in that one building that was a church. Yeah. And the Delta guys, handled most of that. We had some guys supporting it. It wasn't me. And then went around and basically accepted the surrender of most of the rest of the Panamanian army, and they just swore themselves into they swore allegiance to the new government, and now we're friends. Yeah. Right? It's kind of fun, It doesn't really change. It's still pretty much the same. Raise your right hand. Okay, now we're allies. Right? Just a minute ago we were trying to kill each other. Okay, cool. No foul. Right.
Right. Yeah. It's just all's well that ends well, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. So yeah, but it was, it was cool.
So then from there, like you said, you got off active duty, and then into the Guard, and then into 20th Group from there. So what was your, were you a Bravo?
Yeah.
What was your MOS on the team?
So I was an 18 Bravo, a Special Forces Weapons Sergeant. Graduated the Q course, ended up, there was a divorce in there. kind of a common theme
SOP.
with a lot of our guys,
Yeah.
right? So I ended up moving from the West Coast, or actually the Phoenix area, near you, to Florida, because all my new friends there that I went to the Q course were in the Florida Guard and 20th Group, and so it was like fresh start. Moved to Florida, let's do that, and it was great. I have great friends. I still live there. Ended up moving there. The idea was, okay, get out of Q course, let's get back into the college thing, start going to school. Sometime in there, I got picked up for an active duty program. So school's back on the back burner. As I've always said, I'm not really into college.
Yeah.
So I didn't try very hard. It was more, I was like, oh, I can go be a Green Beret, every day and still be in the National Guard, still live in Gainesville, Florida.
Yeah.
So counter drug, back when that was a big program. I'm not sure if it is anymore. Did that. Was a part of it. Helped start up a training program there. So that was kind of how I started getting into as a trainer and a training manager and stuff like that. And then 9/11 happened, and about that time I started working at. Shortly after that, I started working. I was still in the training world, so I became a training manager at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center.
Oh, that's right. I
in
forgot.
Brunswick, Georgia.
I forgot you spent time at FLETC.
Yeah. So, and then that's when I was deploying. So, deployed to Afghanistan, 03, 04. So, one of the first or second rotations
pretty early on.
After the initial guys went in, and then 06, 07, Iraq as team sergeant, and that was when it was like, this is going on. I don't know that I want to work at the police academy right now. And
I was going to ask, so was FLETC the day job while you were?
No, I mean, I was a regular guard guy.
Okay.
We weren't deployed. So when I started working as a contractor, I left because I was a GS employee.
Okay. Yep.
Left there to pursue that. Just kind of figured, because the deal was I was not a federal agent.
Right.
So I was just a civil service employee who worked there, and so that was about all I was ever going to be there. And so I was like, well, at some point I'm going to be where, what's the best way to say it, where I'm kind of stuck here because I've spent so much time, it's, doesn't seem like makes sense. So if I'm going to go and the war's going, and, people were paying guys like me with top secret clearances good money.
Well, and not having agent creds at a place like that it's kind of, there's a built-in glass ceiling there. Right?
Yeah, and not that it's bad. I mean,
no, it's just it is what it is.
It's the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. If you're not a law enforcement, officer or an agent, you're just your support staff. And I was a Green Beret who was hired to teach them how to shoot and fight. But that was it. I was never going to go out and do what I was teaching them to do. So, decide, hey, if I'm not going to stay here, I shouldn't stay here forever, until it gets harder for me to leave. And, the contract stuff, as can be scary, because you got a good job one day and the next day it's gone.
Yeah.
And stuff. So I think that's where I really was forced to embrace the entrepreneurial kind of mindset, more the mercenary mindset, really. Yeah. It's like, you have to always be thinking about what you're going to do next or after that, if the bottom falls out. And, being a former soft guy, or even then, I was doing that. I was still in the Guard for a while. You're used to contingency planning, but, I had one scare, and then I realized, oh crap, this is not a regular job. I don't have job security here. So that PACE plan, I need to have that for more than just combat operations.
So is that period kind of the initial genesis of Greenline then for you?
Yeah, well,
or
Greenline,
what would become Greenline?
Greenline actually was the company that I formed when I became a contractor.
Okay.
To, because it was a one-man LLC.
Yep.
Type of thing, and I just maintained the name and all that. Because I was starting to do training classes here and there when I was home from trips and things, when I had the time and stuff. So I always kind of knew that this is what I like to do. You know, I knew that even back before when I was running the training program there for the National Guard. It used to be called the Florida Counter Drug Training Academy. I knew that I liked the teaching and just sharing the stuff that I've learned. It was really how I didn't see myself as a trainer or like we think of nowadays. Being an SF guy, that's a lot of what we did. We traveled around. We just taught people basic military skills. But I found quickly over time that I enjoyed sharing the stuff that I've learned over the years, because unknowingly I figured out, hey, I had become a student of the arts of what we did. You know, not necessarily a martial artist, but I was always wanting to be better and better at different things. Always trying to learn this and that, and then a lot of my other friends had too. But then I learned that I liked sharing what I know with people. And so it just kind of blossomed from there. And when I had opportunity or time, I would teach some classes in between deployments, and that just kind of grew.
I know for a little while, and you'll have to kind of fill in the gaps for me here, you also worked for TNVC for a little bit. So was that post-contract life?
Working for TNVC, yes, was post-contractor life. During that, which kind of led me to my relationship with TNVC, was I was a partner in another company that specialized in doing night vision training and stuff. And that's kind of how I got into the night vision game, was with those guys. And one of those guys was a former teammate of mine. And we were, I'd say about 15 years ago, we were probably about the only people building curriculum for tactical night vision type training when, there really wasn't anything inside the government either, inside the military. And we saw that. And the more I learned about the technology, I was like, crap, how come I didn't know this? We're fighting a war with this night vision stuff, and we don't really know how it works and why it works the way it does and how to get the most out of it. So I started showing my guys on my team, I'm like, get in here, let me teach you about these PVS-14s and how we're going to start using them on the team and stuff like that. They're like, oh, this is boring. And, some of them, thought it was cool. So there was that. And then working overseas, with the knowledge that I had from doing that stuff, I was like, okay, now I'm putting into application, some of the stuff that I've taught people and theorized. And then when it was time to start hanging that up, through those relationships, I'd become, friends with Vic DeCosta, who owns TNVC and had done stuff with TNVC before. So I had history there already. I'd pro-staffed at SHOT Show for them and things like that. So, when I became available, I put out some feelers and said, hey, I'm looking to, maybe not do this anymore. And, I think it was Chip Lasky, a mutual friend of ours. He's like, Vic wants to talk to you. So I was like, oh, cool. I was hoping that, that it would work out that way. And I spent, I'm guessing here, but maybe about 5 years I was there, and I was the director of law enforcement and government sales and the director of training. So like their current training program, I basically stood that up and got that off the ground. So yeah, I'm associated a lot with the night vision game and the night vision training, and that's how we got there, was just over the years. So a little bit more than, not discounted, not a little bit more than just being an end user that was issued stuff and used it a lot. I was tied in with the industry, the night vision industry, quite a bit prior. So other products other than what I was issued and just had to figure out how to use myself was. I think that's one of the things that sets me and the guys that work with me apart, because we're dudes that have been involved in the industry since it was PVS-7s, PVS-14s, and stuff like that. So we've been able to see the evolution and be a part of that. So when I left TNVC, while I was with TNVC, I was doing more Greenline stuff, and it was all just everything but night vision, because I didn't want to compete, with my responsibility there. And once I stepped away from TNVC, then started.
Yeah, I think the first night fighter class I took with you was actually a TNVC night fighter class.
And I believe it. I'm not going to say it was the first one we did, but it was one of the early.
Yeah.
And it very well might have been the first official TNVC night fighter class. It was in Alliance, Ohio.
Yep.
you came out, and because we had a lot of industry friends there too. So that's why I'm thinking
Yeah,
it might
that's
have been,
maybe that's
might have been the very first one.
or at least one of the early ones, because there were a lot of industry folk there to, kind of get a taste of what it was that you guys were doing, right? So, like you said, let's fast forward a little bit again. You stepped away from TNVC and really to embrace Greenline Tactical. I think right now, because there's such a surge in night vision consumership.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Greenline Night Fighter course is sort of the thing that gets, skylined the most.
Yeah, and it's something that I've become known for, I guess, is that. It's not the only thing we do, obviously. Carbine, pistol, DMR. At this point, Greenline's more than just me.
Right.
As of a couple of years ago, well, I've always had, Sam Houston, who's interviewed with you. He's been like my helper for a long time, assistant. He's the co-creator of our Night Fighter program. So, he's the co-instructor. He's not my AI. If you come to one of our classes and we're teaching together, people call it literally is the Sam and Don show, because Sam and Don wrote this curriculum. He's not the assistant instructor on that. Now, if it's something else, that. But we now have, I now have a handful of instructors that also teach with me. Some to a greater extent than others, depending on their availability and stuff like that. Some of them would do it full time if I had enough for them, and some of them have regular jobs that only gives them so much flexibility. So, I've got one of the top snipers in the country as one of my instructors. A couple of them, one that used to be a sniper school instructor. Operations guys from marksmanship training centers, stuff like that. So, and almost everybody kind of is in the night vision thing, or into the night vision thing. And some of them, that's how they ended up, or ended up meeting me and getting involved. But for the most part, they all have other disciplines that they're kind of subject matter experts in too. So it's really kind of cool. So we're kind of full spectrum on most things. There's some other niche things that we don't really do a lot with, some of the vehicle CQB type stuff. Could we? Yeah, but there are guys that are doing that specialize in that, and they have they've taken the time to put together a very, very good curriculum that I'm not going to put that kind of time in just to compete with one of my friends. You go do that with Will Petty or somebody like that, and come see me for the other stuff.
Yeah. I don't want to go too far down the night vision rabbit hole, because there's other stuff I want to cover, but because we are on it, I do want to touch on Night Fighter being what I think it might be the most comprehensive, foundational night vision shooting course, at least in my experience.
I would agree with you.
For those that haven't taken it, let's talk a little bit about what do you guys teach, and what do you guys consider the foundation of not just strapping a set of goggles on your head, but you guys call it Night Fighter for a reason.
Right.
And it's more than just night shooting.
It's not even just the night vision.
Right.
Or what you think of as night vision.
So talk us through some of that.
So cool. I say this in pretty much every Night Fighter class to kind of set the expectations. Night Fighter is not a shooting course. It's a night vision course where we shoot. The shooting is what we do to get good at using the night vision. So you need to show up there already being what I would consider a student of the gun, an experienced student in tactical training, in the tactical training realm, because I'm not here to teach you those things. I'm here to show you about the night vision while doing the things that you already know how to do with the equipment you already have. So we're integrating the night vision and the visual augmentation systems, the VAS, into the stuff that you already are good at, so we can make it 24/7. That's one of the things that I try to always point out to the classes or people that are asking. Like, it's a difference. It's not just my combat carbine course at night with nods, and you can do that. You just go out and shoot. But we're here to teach you about the equipment, about the technology, why it works, how it works, left and right limits, strengths and limitations, so that you can employ it to its maximum capabilities. We're very knowledge heavy in our philosophy. So the first day we spend a lot of time in the classroom, and the amount of time we spend that day is usually dependent upon the students. We have people will just continue to ask questions after questions after questions, and nobody's upset. Nobody says, dude, shut up, I want to go to the range. They want to know the answer to the question too. I've had peers say, why do you guys do so much, of that? Nobody cares about that. I'm like, if they didn't care, they wouldn't ask us questions for 8 hours straight. We've had it go so long that our first night on the range is usually pretty light, easy anyway. A couple times it's gone so long on the questions, we're like, forget it, guys. We're gonna do all the range stuff tomorrow, because it would be a waste of time for us to just go out to the range for 45 minutes. It's so late already. It's no big deal. We have contingencies for that. It's happened before. We call it option B. It's like, because we've had other times where the classroom is far away from the range and it wouldn't make sense.
And you kind of have to split it anyway.
Yeah, so we're able just to do all the academics one night and that. So, but I say all that to say this: we're very into the educational side, and I think we picked that up from our time at TNBC, because that was Vic's thought process. His policy was, we're not really here to be salesmen. We're here to educate people, and hopefully they buy it from us. But we're here to educate them about night vision, about the equipment, and that was what he would say that all the time in our staff meetings and stuff like that. And we spent a lot of time on the phone answering people's questions, helping to guide them through the purchasing process. And when Sam and I sat down and started talking about it, there's no way we're not going to give guys the information. So we just basically developed our curriculum like that, and it's been a hit so far. And there are other guys out there, friends and peers of mine, that are teaching night fighter, or maybe call it something else, that I definitely recommend going to. I'm not going to say mine's better, but I'm going to say that's how it's different. Is we definitely focus a lot more on the academic in night fighter. I'm not going to say you're still going to shoot about 600 or 800 rounds. So I'm not cheating you out of trigger time. Trust me, you're gonna gas it up and burn it down.
But there's a deliberate focus on on technical knowledge.
Yeah, that, and then when we're on the range, you may be doing a shooting exercise that you've done in a daytime course, but my learning objective is different than it would be if we were in a combat carbine. We're talking about the laser. We're talking about the laser offset. We're talking about various things. We're talking about photonic barriers and bloom and different things. But I'm using the ready ups to illustrate certain things, or the Xbox or something like that.
Right.
So it's a familiar environment, but the subject matter is different.
I'm glad that you mentioned a couple times, you made reference to the combat carbine course. So like I said, I think that night vision is super hot in the marketplace right now, but it's funny because what I personally know you as it truly is the rifleman, and I know combat carbine is a curriculum that is near and dear to your heart, and I might argue
it's really the first shooting course.
I was just going to say, maybe it might be your flagship course, really.
It was when I started out,
yeah,
for sure. I would say at this point, night fighter, maybe just because of the popularity and what we're known for, but yeah, literally, combat carbine was the first shooting course that I sat down and wrote the lesson plan out, and just I'm going to do that. When I decided I'm going to get serious about teaching, that was the class.
Talk us through some of that development. Talk us through what is your there's tons and tons and tons of carbine classes out there, and almost all of them are pretty good.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is the Greenline approach to combat carbine?
So my thought process always has been, and I think it's either more people are agreeing with me, maybe I changed the paradigm, I don't know, but when I sat down and said, okay, what's my idea of a 2-day AR-15 based, carbine rifle course? What was really popular at the time was what you would maybe consider gas it up and burn it down. nobody was, I'll say nobody, few people were training beyond, 25 yards with a rifle. And it's a rifle. Lots of high-speed gun handling, stuff like that. Not that any of that's bad, but I was like, okay, that's cool, but this is a rifle, not a handgun. Let's shoot it at rifle distances. So, and I've been, friends with Kyle Lamb. So I would say some of the first, like, not critiques, but like feedback that I got was, this is similar to that. And I had never trained rifles with Kyle, but, I read his book and stuff. And like I said, he taught me to shoot a pistol. And it was more barricade shooting. I would say, this is back when a 2-day course was 1,000 rounds. Just everybody, 1,000 rounds. You shot about at least half of that from 50 yards and beyond, between 50 and 100, which was, I had students who had taken lots of classes at that time, and we're talking 10 years ago, that would be like, this is the first time I've shot my rifle this far. I'm like, are you, I'd be shocked. I'm like, are you serious? They're like, yeah. And they trained with this guy. They rattle off all the names of the guys. And I'm like, yeah, we never go past this except we do a walk back or something like that. And I was like, well, these are rifles. You can do a lot of stuff with them. So that's really kind of, where I'm coming from on that is a rifleman ought to be able to put a bullet on whatever he decides to under whatever conditions that exist, right? And that should be to me, that's the goal. If you want to call yourself a rifleman, that's why, when I developed Combat Carbine Level 2, I just took that concept and did one of two things. Either your targets get smaller or the distance gets farther, or maybe both, if I'm feeling evil, right? Because that's the thing. It's like, okay, you can gas it up and burn it down. You can rock these drills from 50 yards, from 100 yards. All right, let's do it at 200. You got a 5,200 yard zero. You're zeroed at 200 yards, right? Let's see. Let's, see what we can shoot for score. Let's see what we can do. So it's a little less, intense. I mean, you still shoot a lot. So when we're up front, up close, doing ready up, we're not shooting the upper chest box. We're shooting the circles and squares on the target. So it's like, how do we take what we're already good at and make ourselves better at? Efficiency. How do we speed up our times? How do we close that gap between speed and precision with our rifles? So if you're doing CQB, how do you get fast and accurate in order to end the fight quickly, kind of thing. So
if you look at Combat Carbine, let's say you look at Combat Carbine 1 and 2 as not as one class, but you look at it as a progression. How far out do you usually take the students from, day one of level 1 to day 2 of level 2?
Well, I mean, in Combat Carbine, we start, it's written for the new shooter, as long as you have some idea of how your gun works and stuff like that. However, I have plenty of experienced shooters that show up and they get a lot out of it. So, but we go through zeroing theory and procedures and stuff like that, and I'll get them on the 50-yard line. I think it's important for, again, somebody who wants to call himself a rifleman to be a little bit anal about the zero of his rifle and know how to do it and care about it. So we don't spend all day. We don't spend a lot of time. Some guys just need to confirm their zero, but inadvertently, all the time, guys show up like, hey, I just got this. I haven't had a chance to zero it. Okay, let's take care of that. Set you up for success for the training day. And then, regular Combat Carbine, I never called it one because I only had one back in the day. We spend a fair amount of time at around the 100-yard line and not much more. I tell hosts and potential hosts that I'd like to have at least 100 yards for Combat Carbine. I could do it with 50, but I prefer to be able to, go back to 100. With Combat Carbine 2, if you go to the website and look at the course, the range requirements, if you want to host a course, I really insist on having 200 yards. More is better. But 200 yards is like, obviously a lot of us are still fans of the 200-yard zero. You have to have 200 yards to zero your gun at 200 yards. Now let's shoot that group at 200. You're zeroed at 200. Let's shoot groups. Let's see what we can do, and at these rifle distances. And a lot of guys are shocked that, especially if they don't have a military background, they don't understand what that AR is capable of, and they've been told by people that it's a CQB gun or whatever, and they're like, I can't believe I'm making hits on a 12-inch gong at 200 yards all day long. I was like, yeah, it's a rifle. I shoot prairie dogs with these things at 500 yards.
Well, what's crazy is as the technology has continued to progress, as ARs have gotten better and better in terms of build quality and the components, 200 yards is not for a well-built AR. 200 yards isn't a feat.
No, as long as the shooter understands what they need to do. And like I said, a lot of it's just they've never had the opportunity to experience that, and they've never been told that, that I guess, maybe it's Hollywood, maybe it's, the training community is all, it's not flash, but when you do most of your training up close, you kind of start to think of, an 11.5-inch, AR or something like that as only good for CQB. When I've had guys with, guns, maybe not quite that short, definitely 14.5s, ringing steel at 600 yards and no problem.
Which, on that note, you do also have there's also a DMR curriculum,
yeah, designated
right?
marksman, SPR, DMR, and then we also, like I said, I've got a couple of the top snipers in the country as instructors, so precision rifle and things of that nature. We like shooting.
Yeah.
We like rifles and we like pistols and everything else. We like shooting at night. That's where we're pretty much a full spectrum training group of guys. Unless there's something super specialized that just like, I'm going to leave that to the guys that's what they do the best. Because those guys aren't going to like start trying to teach a night fighter course.
Right.
For the same reason. It's like,
You guys have clearly put a lot of time into combat carbine and DMR, and again, I know you've got some very, very well accomplished snipers and marksmen in the curriculum. To kind of play devil's advocate in terms of training carbines, I would argue, and I think you would agree that, the AR-15 maybe particularly, but certainly the combat carbine as a weapon at large is maybe the quintessential American weapon. I mean, it harkens back to the Minutemen and to having a musket over the fireplace and all that stuff. Yeah. In a society that is now much more focused on the urban, a lot of the training, especially some of the newer training and some of the entry-level training, is very, very focused on EDC and CCW pistol and 5 rounds at 5 yards in 5 seconds kind of fight. Yep. Where do you think that the combat carbine, again, not necessarily the class combat carbine, but the combat carbine itself as a weapon system, where do you see that fitting into the prepared citizen's toolbox?
Oh, wow. Okay. I mean, first I'll touch on the EDC pistol because, not
that you guys don't teach that.
Yeah, but. No, and we do. And I think that, for the everyday carry stuff is more for personal self-defense, I think. Second Amendment is not about self-defense from criminals. It allows for that, but that's not what it was written for. The rifle is what the Minutemen used to get our freedom, and the rifle is what the Minutemen used to maintain that freedom. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
That's how I feel about it, and that's how I feel about the Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. And it's supposed to be a little scary because it's supposed to be a credible threat. It is what it is. That's how I see the rifle, especially the rifle in general. I think, was it Colonel Jeff Cooper had something to say about it. The rifle in itself has no emotion, or it's a tool that can be used by good men. Mm-hmm. And and I think not everybody's needs to. I mean, I'd like to say, yeah, every young man should do this, but we can go back through history, and only certain percentages of young men or the population, maintain the ability to protect the rest of the population. So, I'm not going to go out there and say everybody needs this. I mean, I would like for that to be the case, but
Right.
no, I think, and so the role in a serious way, that's what I feel about it. But I also know that a lot of our shooters and students, they enjoy it. They do it because they enjoy it. Now they may also have their in the back of their mind being, and I want to be proficient with this just in case I ever need this for whatever, even if it's just for home defense. But we have guys that, okay, they're not into fishing, they're not into golfing. This is their hobby. This is their sport. This is their favorite thing to do. And the cool thing about the training, I'd say community, and it's also a culture, is you run into the same guys all the time. I mean, you go to classes all the time. You bump into dudes that you see at other classes, or you make friends with guys that you met at other classes, and you meet up. You're like, hey, are you going to go to this class? Are you going to go to that class? I signed up yesterday. And so it becomes a tribe almost, the camaraderie, because you're into the same kind of things. So I don't know. I got off on a little bit of a tangent there. But,
no, that's good.
The rifle brings people together.
It does
in so many ways, and it's. I mean, my life, I would say, revolves around it, but it's a big part of my life, and I don't consider it a violent thing. It's something we do. We don't. Are we prepared? Yes, but
Well, you make a good point in that it's kind of easy sometimes to get sucked into the practical application, right? And obviously, I would always advocate that whatever training you undertake, firearms or medical or otherwise, you should approach that from what is my perceived need, what is my perceived application. Yeah. But there is another component to it that you touched on very well just now, which is that it's fun, but it is part of American culture. Yeah. I think there's an argument to be made that shooting is America's first sport.
I was about to say, there's a meme that says, shooting is our national sport, and it always will be, or something like that. I agree. And like we keep going back to the Minuteman. Those were the guys. I mean, they were proficient because they shot their guns. They used them to hunt. They used them for protection. They weren't necessarily training to be soldiers, but they were men who had a use for that, and they were handy with it, and they were willing to use it when needed. But yeah, it's also fun, and some people ask me even about the night vision stuff. Well, what's the practical application? I'm like, can't it just be fun? Can't we just enjoy shooting sometimes?
Because that's why, and sometimes that is a perfectly acceptable answer.
I'm not hurting anyone, but I also am serious about it. I'm serious about what we teach because, it could have grave consequences, but it's also fun. So I'm like, we should also have fun while we're doing it. Let's learn. Let's have a good, fun training environment, but let's take it seriously, but not take ourselves super seriously. How's that sound?
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I really appreciate you taking the time. I mean, I'm here all day. What do you want to talk about?
No, man. I appreciate the opportunity to hang out. I mean, we don't get a chance to hang out enough. So
we don't. No. I'm looking forward to the next night fighter class, the next Greenline class that I get the opportunity to take.
Just check the schedule. Let me know when you want to show up, man.
So what do you guys have coming?
Oh, dude, I have to look at my own website sometimes just to even figure out what I'm doing next. But we have a night fighter course, which will probably be the last night fighter of the season, if I'm not mistaken. There may be one in April, but there's one in March here in Georgia where we're at. And then we have some law enforcement contract stuff in March and some things like that. We'll be at a range day in South Carolina. I don't know if this will even be aired. It may be over with by the time we do that. But so we're going to be teaching at several range days. Those range weekend formats this year. And those are always fun because I get to meet a whole bunch of new people. As a matter of fact, I recommend those to people. It's usually a pretty low-cost way to kind of try out the smorgasbord of some different instructors out there. So if you see one in your area, Like there's one called the MTS Range Day that we're going to be at. There's one later in the year called the Southeast Range Day, Low Country Range Day, and potentially the California one. And you look at those, look at some of those, and there are other ones around the country. Look at those, and they should, like, you see some instructors that you're like, man, I always want to take class from that guy. Well, and he's going to be there too. Like, go to the range thing. You know, go take a clinic from this guy, from that guy, meet this other dude or whatever, and then you're going to run into people that you know if you're already in the training world. And if you're trying to get into it, it's a great place to meet the people and stuff. And you're like, yeah, because you might be like, yeah, I took that 2-hour clinic from Don Edwards. Ain't doing that again. You know, he's a butthole, you know, or whatever. You know, so you never know. You could save some money.
But you make a good point. Those range days, you know, especially the ones where they do bring instructors in, it's a great. It is the appetizer sampler.
Yeah.
Of training. Yeah.
You know, and it's fun. It's you know, camaraderie, people hanging out, like-minded people with the same interests, if you will, and yeah, that's what I always thought is cool. Is you get in one maybe 2 to 3 day weekend. If it's 3 days, you usually get 3 different classes, or at a minimum 2. And some of them do like just a round robin where you spend a half a day with each guy or whatever. You know, yeah, those are great opportunities.
Well, speaking of training buffets, we're bringing the Night Ops Summit back this year for its 3rd year.
It'll be a 3rd annual.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that you guys are going to be there. It's going to be.
Yeah, I'm looking for. I know we got to kind of get a taste of it.
Yeah, I got you a taste. I got you hooked.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Night Operations Summit, the 3rd annual, will be November 2024. Dates escape me, but it's the same 4 days prior to Thanksgiving, weekend that it'll always be, and it's going to be back at GTI and Government Training Institute in South Carolina. We just have a few more details to get all ironed out before we launch ticket sales and stuff like that. But hopefully, in a few weeks, we'll be actually letting people sign up.
That's your website?
It'll be my website. Yeah, we'll announce it on all the social medias and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you want to make sure you get, you can go sign up for the newsletter. That we're getting better about putting out stuff on the newsletter. But all, Instagram, Greenline Tactical, Facebook. We have a Facebook page. YouTube's really small, but we're putting out information however we can there. But I'd say IG right now is our big one.
Okay.
Night Operations Summit. We had multiple instructors teaching different things every night. 4 total nights, days and nights, and 3 of those nights are training classes. Most of the instructors are Greenline instructors, but we usually have some extra guest instructors. Mocha Bear, John Dufresne will definitely be there. I'm not really sure. Those are some of the details we have to iron out is how many, who's going to teach what and all that before we lock it in. Because when people come to sign up on the website, I don't want them to have to wait to find out what they're going to sign up for. I want to have all that ready to go so that you can get the link to the Sign Up Genius thing that we use to pick your classes. Because I like it to be first come, first serve. You get a reward for being one of the first guys to sign up. You get to choose the classes you want to take. They're not filled up yet. Sorry, you guys will wait to the last minute. You get what you get. Right? Sorry, don't have a fit, as my mom used to say. Right.
That's how it goes. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, we're looking forward to coming back to Summit this year, and we'll see you there. Hopefully, we'll see you beforehand. But
absolutely.
Thanks so much for dropping in.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, appreciate you.